welcome you to another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This week, we're looking at an unknown Dutch pen from the 1950s, Pilot Justus 95, the Waterman's Ideal 52, Parker 51, Pilot Fermo, a Majestic, which I don't know much about, a Platinum 3776, a Russian pen with a complex name that I'm going to have to look up, a Cora from the 1950s, the Russian pen, and the Majestic, by the way. The Majestic is from the 50s, the Russian pen is from the 80s. A Pilot Vanishing Point, and a Lamy 2000. Alright, so among these pens, we have two restoration projects that happened over Easter break. One was the Russian pen, the other one was the Majestic. So I'll save them for a bit. I actually would like to start with the Waterman's Ideal 52. Trying something different. So Waterman's Ideal 52, I'm not going to write with this week. Why? Because it's empty. I emptied it out because I really like its very flexible nib. I've been using Montegrappa Bordeaux ink in it. It's very nice ink and pen combination for writing graduation cards. Of course, much as I might like to, I can't afford to give gifts to all my graduating seniors. So what I do is I write them a personal note. I'm also a photographer, so for the majority of them I have a bank of photographs I've taken over the years that are tagged with their names, so I give them a private web address so they can access those pictures. So that's what I do. So I always write a personal note. Sorry, I'm looking for an example here. So I always write a personal note and then include a little card that has that URL on it that's private just to them. I try to fold the card up nicely. This is what I usually do with it. Now I will put a link, because this is not my design and I haven't yet put the name of the student who it's to on here yet, so hopefully I remember. And usually I don't have writing over here, but there's a reason it's there. But anyway, usually I'll put who it's to here so I remember and put it in the right envelope. But I'll put a link to the video that shows you how to fold this, since it's not my own design. And maybe you'll find a nice way to make some cards, because these are always impressive. Take a little time to fold, but very impressive. Alright, so since I can't really talk about the Waterman's, this pen is not inked up. That's enough talking about that. Let's pull out. By the way, somebody asked about this. This is the notebook I've been using for my pens in use is a Bomo art journal. This is a product made in Hungary. I really like the design. I have another one not right at hand, but it has a underwater design. That's going to be my next one for pens in use. So I'm using one side for pens in use, and then I've been putting notes about pens, the vintage pens for the vintage reviews on the other sides. And the paper is not Tomoe River paper, the way the person who asked about it wondered. It's a Hungarian paper. I don't know much about it. Whatever it is, Bomo Art Journal uses. But, sometimes you get a little bleed through, but it actually does pretty well. And here I will put a link to this in the video description also, but if you don't want to read the video description, you can get your own Bomo Art Journal. Not an advertisement. I've been using this for a while, just somebody asked. So they have some very impressive paper like this, paper stationery products. So enough said. If that's your bag, then go check it out. So not Tomoe River paper at all. Alright, so let's jump to a pen that actually is writing. Let's jump to the good old Lamy 2000. I just want to mention that as you watch this, I'm actually recording this 2 days ahead. I'm recording it on the night of the 19th. I am in Fargo as you watch this. I'm taking my students to the State Science Olympiad. So I will be spending an interesting evening in a motel with a group of teenagers. And tomorrow we'll compete at the state level. I don't foresee us going any further than state level. We're a very small rural school with an undersized team competing against, the Bismarcks and Fargos and the private schools and so on. But I look at it more as an opportunity for my students to do science, learn and experience, and to see a bigger world in science than just our little rural classroom. So that's what I'm doing tonight and tomorrow. Pity me, because we couldn't get a bus driver. I have to drive them all back from Fargo. And I live clear on the other end of the state and almost on the South Dakota line. So yeah, it'll be a long trip out and a long trip back. So I'm in a good mood now. Don't talk to me Saturday night or Sunday morning, because I won't be in a good mood then. I'll be tired. But anyway, enough about me. We're here to look at pens. So this is a Lamy 2000. Always a favorite. In fact, I need to ink this up before I leave for Fargo because it's almost empty. Fine point, because I use it all the time. This is like my go-to pen. And I like Noodler's Black. There's just a couple issues with it that I don't like, which is why I'm investigating other blacks, and you will see some of them tonight. Some you've seen before, some you have not. Alright, so nothing too exciting going on with the Lamy 2000. If you watched my video reviews this week I reviewed the Pilot Fermo. Just real briefly, we'll compare it to the Pilot Vanishing Point, and you can get a more thorough comparison in the video. Down the road, I'd like to do a more thorough video where I truly compare them, a rodeo. But the Decimo, just a little less girthy than the Vanishing Point, and it is a twist nib rather than a clicky nib. And I kind of like the Decimo better. It just feels better in the hand. Not that girthy pens bother me, but in this case, those couple of millimeters did. So this is a Pilot Fermo. This has a fine nib in it. And the ink is platinum black, which actually, looking at this, I think that looks pretty darn good. There's a couple inks I like better. Platinum does have a nice bottle. It's square, which is a little weird, but it is a nice bottle. Because the Platinum bottle has one of those inserts that allows you to get every last drop of ink, so I kind of like that. Alrighty. So that is the Pilot Fermo. The Pilot Vanishing Point. A little noisier. I have a medium nib in it. And the nibs are interchangeable, although this one has a gold-colored nib to match the gold-colored finish. Not that it's a bad pen, it just doesn't feel as good in my hand as the Decimo. Or, I'm sorry, as the Fermo, which is the same size as the Decimo, which is why I keep getting confused. This pen is filled with Dea Trementis. The ink is supposed to smell kind of, well, like apple blossoms. It's one of those scented inks. I'm not, particularly a fan, but if it's a nice color, I'll take it. This one is a nice color. I can't explain why I like it, because it doesn't really click any boxes for me, and it just somehow appeals to me. Alright, and on the scented ink topic, this is a pen that I will be reviewing next week, which is why it's inked up. This is a Parker 51. I got it in a trade with a Norwegian gentleman. And speaking of scented inks, this is another one. I love the color. The scent, nothing like blackberries, it's just vaguely fruity. Dea Trementis. Blackberry. This pen is actually kind of wetter than I would have thought it would be, but well, not that that's a bad thing. It's a thing. It's a trait of the pen. And I'll talk more in depth about that this week. This is another pen that I got in a trade with the Norwegian gentleman. This one is, I believe, a Pontiac, but I believe it's a prototype. His understanding was that it was just a prototype, never released to the public. He had to install a nib on it. His option was a Knox nib. Now, I kind of want to pull out that Knox nib and try out one of those fire blue nibs from Nemocene. But up until the review, I'm going to keep it the way he found it. So this is an upcoming review. I need to research Pontiac a bit more, so I don't know if you'll be seeing this soon or later. But so we'll call it a possible Pontiac. Very wet pen, at least with this nib. It's a Dutch brand anyway. And the nib, I do not see a size written on it, so we'll just, I'm going to guess broad, but I don't know. The ink is my last few drops of Robert Oster. Oster, Fire and Ice. I'll bet this bled through to the other side too. And I promise not to sing this time, because I did learn the name of the song. Oh, I didn't do too badly. I'll show you here. Let me pick up the document camera. Not bad. I mean, there's a little show through, but no bleeding. So, yeah. Now, this ink is supposed to have a reddish sheen. I've seen it a little bit on Tomoe River paper, so let me write just a wee bit on the Tomoe River paper. I'll let that dry, then we're going to pull out the magnifier. Somewhere, we better get some sheening. So I'll set this aside to dry. I promise to come back to the magnifier. I'm not forgetting. I also want to show you a close-up of this cool herringbone finish, but we'll come back to that. We'll make sure everything's good and dry so it's a nice look at the ink. All right, my next pen, I have inked up several times. When it runs dry this time, I'm going to clean it out. A pen I like very much. It's a Pilot Justus 95. It has a soft, fine nib. Currently adjusted in the soft setting. This one's kind of cool because it has this little bar on the nib that you can adjust to a hard. I like it. The ink is discontinued, Sailor Epinard. I wish it was still around because I love this color. I've found inks that emulate part of the color, but not all of it. And that's too bad. I'm sure Sailor had good sound business reasons for discontinuing it, but it is what it is. This pen, I decided to do an experiment. I let it sit for 3 weeks just to see how it would go. Well, how many weeks? How many weeks since we last saw this pen? Maybe more. Okay, here we go. So April 7th. Okay, maybe not 3 weeks. April 7th, April 14th. Okay, 2 weeks. I wrote with this pen on April 7th, and then I put it away. And I want to see how it would do. Now, full disclosure, I actually wrote a letter to somebody, and one of the pages was written with this pen. So you're not going to see it. What I saw is the pen started up like a champ. The slip and seal mechanism inside the cap works for at least 2 weeks. So it's a Platinum 3776, a soft fine nib, and the ink is Pelikan, Edelstein, Onyx. Which actually turns out to be kind of a nice black. You know, it's a little shady, but it is a nice black, at least in a fine point. My main objection to it is price. I mean, if it's going to be an everyday ink, let's have it a little cheaper. And you might be saying, well, Pelikan does make an everyday black. Let's pull that one out. So this pen is a Majestic. This is another one we're going to look at with my microscope. Well, it's not a microscope, but we'll get to that. So it's a Majestic. I know almost nothing about the brand. I know it's from the 1950s. I'm guessing, I don't actually know what the nib is made out of. That's part of what I wanted to do tonight, is maybe get a close-up, try and read what it says. But the pen is, I'd call it a fine. It's a very hard nib. The ink inside of it is the regular Pelican Brilliant Black. Shot up to a front runner almost right away. I mean, that is blackety black, black, black. I'm impressed. In fact, I'd go so far as to argue it's a little bit blacker than Noodler's Black. Impressive. So like I said, I've got the magnifier. It's not really a microscope. I got the magnifier out here. We're going to come back and do a look, but I don't want to do the changing back and forth. All right, 2 more pens, then we'll pull out the magnifier. This is a cool little find. This is another Dutch pen. This is a Cora. It's a 1950s pen from Holland. This has a rather flexible nib. This ink doesn't quite have what Sailor Epinard has, but it is a nice ink. This is Private Reserve. Avocado. Doesn't look very avocado-y. Maybe skin. But anyway, this is Cora there. I'll try and, yeah, there you can see it. It's one of those slim, it's not a black pen that I like, but it's one of those slim minimalist pens that I like. I'll do a more full review on it after I've filled it a few times. Has a nice big ink window. Apparently got a little ink around the collar there, but yeah, it's a pen I like. And my last pen here is my exotic Russian pen. Now, before I open it up, this one was a treat. And I mean that sarcastically. So I purchased this pen for about $9. I know I don't usually give prices, but it gives you an idea. It's a 1980s pen made in the Soviet Union. It is clearly modeled after maybe the Parker 51 or perhaps the Parker 45 or perhaps a combination, I'm not sure. You're about to see one of its drawbacks. I'll tell you one of the experiences I had with it. When I bought it, it was full of very, very super dried ink. I soaked it for about 3 days, constantly getting ink out, before I could even get the piston to pull anything. And then it took a lot more soaking before I could finally open up the piston, which is kind of a captured converter. I don't know if captured converter is the right word, but it's a converter hidden underneath the cap, and you just turn this part here. But yeah, it was quite a lot of soaking and some work with a needle, if you can imagine it. Now, I'm not going to put that part back on for a reason. See, I'm trying to write the name of the pen. Nothing's happening. If I let this pen sit too long, it quits writing. Then I have to reprime the feed, so it does not hold ink very well. It's not, like I said, the best pen. So I'm just going to run a little, I'm going to turn this piston knob a little bit till I can see some ink. There, I got some ink in between the tines. Now I'll turn it back. Use your imagination. Now I'll put this piece back on, because now the puppy's going to write. And I brought over my list of pens and inks in use at the moment, because I'm not going to remember the name of this pen. So this is a Yaroslavl. I filled it with Noodler's Rattler Eel Red. The reason is this is an ink that usually does... Whoops. This is an ink that usually does a good job cleaning out pens. So I thought this would be a good one for anything that my whole soaking, cleaning, flushing, using chemicals on process didn't get out. You know, I don't like to use pen flush. I broke down and used some on this pen. But anyway, those are my pens in use. This one, actually, once it writes, is not a bad writer. It's just talking this poor thing into writing that's a bit of a bugger. So, yeah, glad I got it to work. I'm still sad I have a Soyuz pen with a very similar nib. I originally bought this to kind of replace the nib, but then it turns out this one is a pretty nice pen in its own right. So, yeah, other than this whole ink starvation thing, when it sits too long, something I will have to deal with. Alright, so I'm going to put on the magnifier, and there's a light on it. So we'll slip on the magnifier. We'll look at some writing samples first. Whoops, and I'm putting it on backwards, which is why it won't go. We'll look at some of this ink first. So, I'll tease you a little. This is the Private Reserve Avocado. And I said I wanted to compare it to Epinard. So the Epinard is just not as bright as the Avocado. Alright, now to compare these black inks, here is Pelican Black, Edelstein Onyx. The Pelican Black I'd say is a little blacker. Up here, Platinum Black, which has now become a lot more gray now that it's had time to sit. And the Noodler's Black. Alright, now you're all wondering, but we're going to save the best for last. So here's our Diatramentus Apple Blossom. Diatramentus Blackberry, you can see a little feathering. The Rattler Eel Red, little feathering, not bad. So here's the one you were wondering. Robert Oster, Fire and Ice. I won't sing, I'm so tempted, but commenter Alex Mood made me promise not to sing again, so unless I'm trying to find the name of a song, I won't. But, yeah, so no sheen. But this is also a very absorbent paper. Alright, so we'll set this paper aside. Let's just see what happened on this. Is a Clairefontaine? Clairefontaine? I don't know, I don't speak French. Anyway, really nice paper. Tomoe River paper. I am seeing actually a tiny bit of sheen. Now, as soon as I put the close-up magnifier on it, though, I can't see it. But, you know, these parts of the F in the little hoop part, those are sheeny from a little further away. Okay, so interesting. They always say look at the deeper parts around the edges of the letters. There, around the top of the N, right before the D, you can see some red sheen. My naked eye saw some around the D. Yeah, now that I'm right on it, I can't see it. Interesting. I see some at the tail of the D, so maybe I have to be off to the side a little. And that actually matches one of the experiences I've had with a lot of these sheening inks. People are disappointed. They actually look better under artificial light, probably because it's at more of an angle. I don't know. But yeah, so a little sheen around the edges, but nothing amazing. I expected more, honestly, from all the hype I'd heard. You know, maybe I should have put it into a really wet pen. Well, I did put it into a really wet pen, just apparently not wet enough. Naked eye, and with this, I'm not seeing anything on the Clairefontaine paper. All right, and I promised a close-up of the finish on two of these pens. So this is the Pontiac, I think, with the herringbone, and you can see it's kind of a nice. It's even got sparkles. He claims that it's celluloid. I don't know. I don't know enough to judge. I do know that this goes the whole way through. It's not just a coating. And then the Majestic, which I know nothing about, the retailer I purchased it from thought maybe it was lucite, but they didn't actually know, so they were just guessing. But isn't that nice? It wouldn't surprise me if this is celluloid either. I guess I could try lighting it on fire, see if it goes up, but that sounds a little harsh to me. But yeah, very nice looking. And if I just do a close-up of the nib, which is admittedly covered with ink. Okay, iridium tipped USA. Doesn't say whether it's gold or not, so I don't know. I'm guessing steel, but I don't know. And the Cora, just out of curiosity, oh, 585. This is a gold nib. How about that? This is a very useful tool. And a lion. Is that a lion? 14K 585. Okay, definitely gold. The lion, and I'm not lying about that. Ha ha ha. I'm going to have to research that logo. Perhaps photograph it. I have a macro, well, camera now. Cost about the same as a macro lens, so I went for it. So I will do some close-ups of that and do some investigating, and hopefully get back to you when I do my review on the pen. So anyway, I hope you've seen something interesting here. I hope this was useful. Feel sorry for me. There is actually a driving video ready for Sunday. So, yeah, already filmed and recorded. So there just was nothing last week because I was busy and it got away from me. So I thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.